And so when it comes to the creative life, when it comes to being a musician and building a life with creativity, I've realized that I'm gonna have to embrace uncomfortability. Like, I'm gonna have to embrace the pain and suffering that comes in my life. And because it's what's required for growth, it's what's required for maximizing the potential of my creativity. What's up, guys? My name's Shekinah Tebi, aka Shay, and you are watching episode 4 of The Creative Quest. So I realized that the past 3 episodes of the show so far could kind of all be categorized under this one umbrella of kind of the philosophy of creativity. And thinking about that is what inspired this next episode, where I want to talk about the role of suffering in the journey of creativity. So I'm actually here in downtown Memphis super early in the morning. It's like 7 a.m. Way too early for me normally to be down here, but no one's down here, and I really wanted to get some shots here in the South Main District specifically for this episode, and I didn't want anybody to really be around. This is a really tourist heavy area. I'm actually by the Lorraine Motel here in downtown Memphis, and this is where one of the biggest moments of pain and suffering happened in this city, the assassination of Dr. King. It shook the entire world, but Memphis took a huge hit, and it really did affect the community here in a way that we're still recovering from even now in 2019. So living here in Memphis since 2011, I've learned a lot about the city's history. My job in Memphis tourism as an entertainer has kind of forced me to learn about the history of the city and, of course, about its music history. I've learned a lot in a very short amount of time, and really the city has a very special place in my heart because of that. And the one thing that I've noticed about Memphis is that its impact on the entire world creatively. Of course, everybody kind of knows that rock and roll was born right here in Memphis, Tennessee. But rock and roll wouldn't have really happened without the influence of the blues music that was born in the Mississippi Delta. Now, this music was invented by the lowest on the social class totem pole. This music was invented by the field laborers that were working in the cotton fields. They were black slaves, and this music was born out of their field hollers and their work songs. Music was a way for them to find joy, a way for them to process their life, and also it was something that nobody else could take from them or influence or manipulate. The blues migrated up here to Memphis in the early 1900s, and this music influenced some of the greatest artists that went on to change the face of the music industry forever. Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash are just a couple of those. Like, the rock and roll movement happened because of the blues. It started with the blues. The blues and gospel, they clashed together, and rock and roll was born. And without, that early part of rock and roll, like the music that I listen to that I love so much, punk and metal and anything edgy and alternative, metalcore, all hardcore, all that, that music, everything's connected. And so I have a deep respect for what happened here in Memphis. But a lot of these musicians whose creativity and art really changed the world were people who were encountering a tremendous amount of suffering. I mean, these blues players from the Delta were in slavery, and they were being oppressed. And I mean, even Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley, they had very, very hard lives. They came from very, very poor backgrounds. They had nothing. They grew up in shotgun shack houses with no electricity and no running water. The more and more I learn about creativity and the imagination and the process of creativity, the more and more I learn about art and the power of art and how it influences culture, the more that I start to see this pattern that creativity and pain and suffering go hand in hand. The power of creativity is born out of struggle, is born out of difficulty, is born out of hardship. I think as a culture, especially here in the West, we try to avoid hardship at all costs. Like, we're a very privileged culture. We have a lot of luxuries, and we always try to alleviate suffering the best that we can. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but it's become a lifestyle that I think has really, really crippled us. Like, our perspective of pain and suffering and our attitude towards it, I think, handicaps us in a way. I mean, if you think about it, if you think about some of your favorite songs and some of the artists that have impacted you the most, and I mean, what songs really hit you in the heart? I mean, the songs that you felt, the songs that you could relate to, the songs that made you feel like you weren't alone. And those songs were birthed out of probably a very painful time in that artist's life. If you've watched any of my other episodes, you probably know that I've been reading this book called The Courage to Create by Rollo Rollo. He talks about how creativity is this birthing of something new, but in order for that birthing of something new to happen, like something has to be destroyed, like something has to be teared down. Like there has to be a period of breaking and cracking in order for the new thing to come in. And I mean, if you look at the universe and how the world works, birthing new life is a very painful process. Like women break their bodies to give birth to a new human. Like it's insane. And a seed planted in the ground has to crack and split open and break apart in order for the new sapling to shoot through, in order for it to grow. And I mean, if you even look at the seasons, like the leaves have to die on the trees and then fall to the ground in order for spring to come. This is the pattern of our world, is this role of death and pain and suffering and hardship that is the path to growth and new life. Our whole world was born out of creativity. It would make sense that our creativity would follow that same pattern and that the rest of reality would follow that same pattern. We could even go as far as learning an instrument. Like when I was first learning guitar, I mean, I was 7 years old. I remember like it hurting my fingers. And I tell my students this all the time when they're like, it hurts. And they're just like, they quit like in the middle of the lesson because it hurts. And I'm like, hold on. You have to push through the pain. You can take breaks and breathe for a minute, but you have to keep going because you're going to build those calluses and then eventually your fingers aren't going to hurt anymore and you're going to be able to play without that pain because you're going to build up that endurance. It's the same thing with any sort of like creative craft. Like when you're first learning, like it's uncomfortable. It's not necessarily fun. Even when you're like working out or when you're learning how to do a sport, it's like it never feels good when you're training. When you grow and you finally reach that milestone of success and that next level up, it does feel really, really good. But what you had to go through to get there isn't always comfortable. Well, actually, I should say that it's never going to be comfortable. If you want to grow, if you want your creativity to grow, if you want to live the creative life fully, you have to tap into what it really means to be human, what it really means to be a created creature. And part of that is pain, is suffering, is going through this process. Like we're not exempt from the pattern of this world and how this world was made. We have to fall in line with that, otherwise we run into some really, really big problems. And so when it comes to the creative life, when it comes to being a musician and building a life with creativity, I've realized that I'm gonna have to embrace uncomfortability. Like I'm gonna have to embrace the pain and suffering that comes in my life. And because it's what's required for growth, it's what's required for maximizing the potential of my creativity. And I mean, this doesn't just go for creativity, this goes for life in general, but specifically speaking to artists, I think artists kind of have a leg up on the rest of society in some way because they have this ability to embrace suffering and use it as fuel to create something beautiful out of it. And I love that so much. One of my favorite things about the creative craft is being able to manifest this process of something ugly turning into something beautiful and putting that on display for the rest of the world. And it gives them hope, you know, it gives the rest of the world hope that, wow, pain and suffering is not all there is. Like beauty is also there, but they have to go together because one depends on the other, which is really sucky. But at the same time, we wouldn't feel the depth of beauty without knowing the hardship, you know what I mean? And I don't know if anybody's seen the movie The Giver or read the book The Giver. It's one of my favorite stories ever. They try to shield their entire society, their entire community from pain and from suffering. And what they end up doing is building a world that's completely void of creativity, void of beauty. It's very sterile, it's very like shallow, and the potential for any sort of flourishing human relationship is stunted. And so in their attempt to create a world where there is no pain and there is no suffering, they end up completely sucking the life out of the community. They completely suck all beauty out of the world. And people start to figure that out and they start to get angry about it. They start to get upset about it because they feel like they're missing something. By no means am I saying that we should trash modern medicine or that we should intentionally go out and seek you know, pain and suffering for the sake of pain and suffering. Like, that's dumb. Like, don't do that. Like, don't throw yourself into terrible situations just for that. And don't stop trying to make the world a better place. We're motivated by desire for beauty and desire for goodness, but the thing that we miss out on is that the way to get there is through hardship. Like, all of us suffer in our brains, all of us suffer in our minds and in our hearts. We don't have to go looking for it. It's just already here. And so instead of running from it, we should embrace the present and embrace life as it is. And I really think that's going to help us tap into the potential that our creativity really has. So if you're an artist and if you're a creative person, I just encourage you to really tap into who you are, tap into your experiences, tap into your life, tap into what hurts, get help for what hurts if you need it, please do that, but use that as fuel. Like, allow that to push you into growth and allow that to push you into your art. Like, the process of creativity has actually healed me, and I think that's an incredible thing too, like that this process of creativity requires this pain and suffering that we have to go through, but that's actually the path to healing, because creativity itself can actually heal those things that have been wounded. So if y'all resonated with anything in this episode, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button for me, and then if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, go ahead and hit subscribe as well, so you can be updated every time I come out with a new video every Thursday right here on The Creative Quest, where we talk about creativity, we talk about the process of creativity, specifically revolving around music and building a music career. And with that, my name's Shekinah Tebi, aka Shay, and I'll see you guys next time right here on The Creative Quest. Oh, I'm freaking trapped. I can't get out. There's this big retaining wall and I'm gonna have to jump off of it. Come on, Shekinah. Talking about fear. You're not supposed to be afraid of jumping. There we go. Oh my gosh, it's getting so warm. And I'm so hungry. I came out here so early. All this heat in Memphis. Never, ever, ever, ever get used to the heat in Memphis. I can't. It's like 7 a.m. and it's already like 75 degrees.